primary breed so we can find out who won the gift vouchers. So Healthpathways started in Canterbury, New Zealand back in 2007, 2008 as a way to try and improve care coordination between primary care services and acute care services. They wanted to create a system that was easy to use, that was standardised in its content format, but was then also developed. I thought I had a tennis voice.
You do.
Do I? Can I just stand here and look like I'm angry? I don't know, is that better? Can you hear me better?
Yeah.
Yes. Luckily Luke's also tall, so that should be good. They only hire tall people for Healthpathways. I don't know why. So the idea was to create a system that would provide a standardised format, but would then also provide that local content, understanding how we manage patients, when we keep them within primary care, when we need to refer them through to tertiary care, and what is that process of who to be referred to. The idea is that Healthpathways has an online clinical information portal and service referral portal. It has to be useful for clinicians. It is written by GPs and it's written for the target audience of you as GPs. So it's designed to be able to be used within a 10-minute patient consultation. If you did a competition, you would have seen that you can very easily search for a pathway, click on it, and it opens up, usually within 10 to 20 seconds. That pathway then is used in a scalable format, so to get from the top of the pathway to the bottom of the pathway, you can read it quite quickly in a consultation with the patient. However, if you want more detail, you've got those little drop-down boxes, which we'll talk about a little bit later, and you can expand those out to get the level of information that you require at the time. Maybe you want to read the whole pathway, you can go home and look at it, but in the consultation with the patient, quickly scan, find the information you need, find the service you need, and move on from there. Now, Healthpathways started in New Zealand back in 2007 or 2008, one of those two. 2011 came over time to New England. That was the first Australian site. There is now more than 40 Healthpathways regions across Australia, New Zealand and the UK. So it's become quite a large thing. But one of the things that you will always find is that it's always the same structure and format. So if you decided, I'm sick of living in Liverpool, why would you? It's a lovely place, and decided you wanted to live up at Port Macquarie, a bit closer to the beach, you could then go onto Mid-North Coast Healthpathways, and it works exactly the same process, where the content will be different. And that content is developed within each of our different areas. So in that conference competition, if you had answered one of the questions on our side of South Western Sydney, you would have had a different answer to what you would have gotten in Western Sydney, and that's because our clinicians have a different opinion to Western Sydney's clinicians. And so their guidance is going to be slightly different as well. And thank you for the person who pointed it out, because I didn't realise at the time, but it definitely shows that local content that comes into it. So the idea is that by using Healthpathways, we move from a fragmented system into a connected system. And here within New South Wales, almost every region has Healthpathways now. The only two that don't have Healthpathways is Far West New South Wales and Western New South Wales. Murrumbidgee and South East Sydney have signed on, and by the end of the year they'll both be live. So as I said before, anywhere you go within New South Wales, you can find that information. We have some brochures outside as well that has the login details for all of the New South Wales sites, just in case you want to see how to refer someone to a Newcastle clinic.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, great. So I'm just going to take you over, I'm not that tall, take you over the structure of Healthpathways. As Ben mentioned, the format structure is the same across all regions, so it's easily understood by anyone. And the idea is that it can be used in consultation with the patient. So what you can see on this page is the neutropenia pathway, which has been collapsed. This is what you'll see when you first open the page. And it's a quick reference guide while you're sitting down in front of your patient doing your consultation. But once you expand everything, you can see it gets into quite a lot of depth and detail. So if there is anything that you need to find out a bit more information about, click on one of the drop-down boxes, and that will give you further details, such as medication dosages and whatnot. Got that. There you go. So just in terms of the structure of the pathway, up the top you have an about box, which will give you further details about the condition. It's not always necessary to read that during your consultation, you might already know it, but it's a nice little information just in case you're unfamiliar. The next thing on the pathway is the red flags, and this is conditions or symptoms more likely that have direct mortality or morbidity risks associated with it, and also potentially medico-legal risks if they're not dealt with correctly. Next we'll go down to assessment, which gives you a guide on how to assess the condition and the various levels of condition.
So usually you'll find history, examination, investigations, and each of those are recommended for that condition.
Yeah, as well as diagnostic tests and whatnot that need to be ordered. Further down is management of how to manage the patient. This might include whether or not the patient would require a referral or whether the patient can be managed in general practice. Below that you'll see the referral options, and this will link you through to referral pages that have all the service details that are available in the area to suit your patient. Below that we haven't marked it out on the slide, but there is further clinical information and patient information. The patient information can be printed out for the patient, and we are in Western Sydney implementing a system that will allow you to directly send patient information from the pathway to their mobile device or email. This is just an example of the referral pages. Western Sydney and South West Sydney have slight differentiations on the format, but it's essentially the same. It offers details about the service and the criteria, exclusion and exclusion criteria for the service, as well as how to get in contact with the service and if they offer advice over the telephone. And there's a whole bunch of other resources as well, tools and resources that you can download. We link to a lot of relevant fact sheets and websites. And on every page you'll see a print button that will give you a print-friendly version of the pathway, as well as a send feedback button. So if you're reading through a pathway and you notice that a link's broken or something's incorrect, if you click that send feedback button and type a message, will come through to either Ben or myself, and we can action that and correct that on the page. Down the bottom you'll see when the page was last updated and when it's due for review. So every 3 years in Western Sydney and 2 years in South West Sydney, we review our clinical pathways. And also there's an expand all drop-down box button down the bottom of the pathways, and that will expand the whole pathway as you saw, which I did with neutropenia. And just to give you an idea, there's two types of pathways generally. There's the clinical pathways, which is your management assessment and referral guidelines, and then the referral pages, which is all the services that are available in the local area. And we have localised pages which have been localised for each region, so Western Sydney or South West Sydney, and they've got a white background. Any pages with a yellow background are from New Zealand and have not yet been localised by the region. So we work as a team in Western Sydney and South West Sydney to localise pages from the base pathways, and we work through that. But there is still relevant information on the non-localised pages. And in the table of contents, the localised pages are black and the greyed out ones are non-localised.
So if you come across a non-localised pathway that's clinical, it still can be quite useful. You will still get some very useful guidance from it. Bear in mind that it is coming from New Zealand, so there are differences around medication requirements, things like their formulary versus LTG and PDS. But when it gets to the request pages, it's always going to go to Christchurch Hospital, so those ones are probably the right ones. Unfortunately, if you're using the search function, it doesn't differentiate a localised versus a non-localised page. They all come up as black. If you see that yellow background, you can know that that's not a pathway that I'm going to be using to refer someone with. We promise we will get to them. There is a lot of pathways. We're both 350 plus in the times that we've gone, but there's probably another 400, 500 we're getting to.
And other useful information on the site includes public health alerts, the latest news from regional and New South Wales, clinical education. Ben's got some webinars up there supporting what pathways he's been developing, the National Health Service directory, which will allow you to find services that aren't listed, and a referral database of referral forms and information.
Yeah, so when we localise the pathways in South Western Sydney, if there's any referral forms that a hospital requires, we will endeavour to turn that into a software template for medical director and best practice, and they will be listed on the request pages, but you can also go straight to our forms database and print them off or import them straight into your software.
And both South West Sydney and Western Sydney have patient information sites which partner with Healthpathways and offer relevant patient information on each of the sites, which is tied into the patient information on each of the pathways. Do you want to talk a bit further about yours?
So within Southwestern Sydney, the idea is we have these little pads, which I forgot to bring today, so I'll castigate myself about that later. The idea is that instead of you having to print off that patient information, you can direct them to this website, and this website will have all the same patient information, but the public can access it. Whereas Healthpathways, it's only for clinicians. The other thing that we're doing is we're starting to develop these fact sheets. That's an example of one of them, the newly diagnosed type 2 diabetes. And what this is we're having a technical writing company translate the health pathway from a clinical guideline for GPs into a health literacy document for patients. But you can know that anything that we've identified as assessment and management in the pathway is also the recommendations that are held within these fact sheets. These fact sheets will be in English, Arabic, Vietnamese and simplified Chinese, and we've also just started developing audio versions of them as well for people who are find it difficult to read as well. And they usually go for about 4 minutes, so you can also just press play in your practice and they can listen to that information as well.
I might just go back to my slide because Tina will kill me if I don't, and give a plug for GoShare. So GoShare is a patient information tool that we're implementing in Western Sydney, which will allow the GP to bundle content information in the way of patient narrative stories, fact sheets, and supporting animations for various conditions, and send that directly to their patient's mobile phone or email address that they can access later down the track. We will be integrating this with our Healthpathways, so you'll be able to find the relative content in the GoShare library and send it directly to your patient from Healthpathways.
Luke gave me demonstrated GoShare today. It's very good. It works really, really well. We've gone low-tech, Luke's gone high-tech. I think both have equal benefits, but GoShare is quite a useful function.
So last slide. With our login details. So in Western Sydney it's health, and Western with the 3 for our login.
So within Southwestern Sydney we've done it by the region in which you practice. So Bankstown, Fairfield, Highlands, Liverpool or Macarthur. We didn't say Wingecarriby because it was too hard to spell. And all of them have the same password, which is network. Once you've logged into either of our sites, it should remember you for at least a month. If you don't wish to log in all the time, within Southwestern Sydney, if you give us the details of your IP address, which is like your public mailbox for the internet, we can have that put onto a list where any time any computer on your server goes to Healthpathways, it automatically logs you in forever. So that's an option you have as well. So what we're going to do now, because we have an interactive section, is we're just going to go through the answers. So for those who did complete the competition, thank you very much. For those who didn't complete the competition, you'll get to know the answers as well. So the first one I'm going to do is Luke's going to do the first 5 questions. So he obviously has to log into the site. And this is purely to make sure that the information on these sites is not accessible by consumers. It has language and information that is specifically designed for GPs. And so therefore we just simply have that password to prevent Google from spidering the site so it doesn't come up in any search results, and to prevent consumers from going on there and diagnosing themselves. We have patient information sites for them to look at that.
So the first question was, what is the rule of 15 in hypoglycemia? So we open our hypoglycemia page, and you can see whatever search term you've searched for is highlighted within the page. And the rule of 15 is found under management, under emergency. Sorry. And it's in a drop down. So all you have to do is press the plus button and it opens up to the drop down. And the rule is to provide 15 grams of fast acting carbohydrates, wait 15 minutes and then retest blood glucose.
We thought we'd start.
Yep. Okay, next one.
Name 3 alternative diagnoses to rule out with a child presenting with juvenile idiopathic arthritis. So this pathway actually is a great example of how we network through. So this pathway was developed with Western Sydney and the Sydney Children's Hospital Network. They have quite a good working relationship. And then we were able to, in southwestern Sydney, borrow that pathway, adjust it slightly because we do have a paediatric rheumatology clinic at Liverpool Hospital, but essentially localise that quite quickly. And the answer is?
Was a whole bunch of it. Septic arthritis, reactive arthritis, acute lymphatic leukemia, systematic lupus. I don't know how to say the last word.
There's a bunch. We'll just go with there's a lot. Generally, everyone chose the first 3, so that was fine. Question 3, name an assessment for cognitive impairment that is accessible in another language. The flags. So what you'll see on here is there's a couple of flags. I'm going to run across here and not trip over. If you see this flag, it means that we have a translated or a multicultural specific resource. If we see this flag, it's denoting an Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander resource or a Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander service as well. There is one more flag you will see on the southwest Sydney side in the patient information, and that identifies whether or not we have a fact sheet for that pathway or not. But the answer is the rudis, the mocha, and that would be it. The Kimberley doesn't. So with the Mocha, you used to be able to just quickly download it. Now you have to register. It's a free registration, and once you've got that login, you can use it as many times as you like. Question 4. This is why you shouldn't get non-doctors to read these questions. What urine albumin creatinine ratio, ACR, range in a female with suspected proteinuria to be diagnosed with microalbuminuria? Is that how you pronounce it? Excellent. I'm a psychologist. We don't speak in Latin. The answer is 3.5 to 35. What is the recommended prednisone dose for an acute exacerbation of COPD? So if we just type in COPD, and then hit enter search, and there we have it. Now this was the one that actually has a different result based on whether or not you're in southwest Sydney or western Sydney. So here in western Sydney, it's 40 to 50 milligrams for 7 to 14 days. If you're in southwestern Sydney, it's 40 to 50 milligrams for 5 days, and that's because southwestern Sydney people heal faster. It's because of the excellent patient care that they receive. So I'm going to take over now, and I'm going to swap, and we'll do the last 5 on southwest Sydney.
Sounds good. So next question was, how far back should contact tracing occur for a positive gonorrhea result? Anyone want to give us a quick answer?
I think someone did the competition.
I think so.
And the answer is correct.
Next one is, when looking at obesity management, what is the level of disease risk for a male with a waist circumference of 103 centimetres?
Unfortunately, I apologise. This question would have been better if I'd also given you a BMI. So when we answered this question, if I go to the level of disease risk, which is here, we accepted any of those answers because it was a poorly written question. So I humbly apologise for that, but congratulations, no one got that one wrong. If I can just point out, I'm pretty sure it's on this pathway as well. There's been a lot of talk today about motivational interviewing. And I'm pretty sure if I look at my clinical resources here, we have a provider-patient weight management discussion guide, which is motivational interviewing for discussing weight-related issues with an adult. So you can print that out and have a read as well if you'd like to how to take those principles and skills you've learned today and relate it to obesity and weight management.
Okay, the next question. Name 2 contraindications of using ivermectin. And this was found on the cardiac drugs and monitoring page.
So there's a whole list there. I'm not going to go through that list. This was our trick question to see if you could still find the pathway. Everyone seemed to, so well done.
Second to the last was name 2 medication regimes available for hepatitis C genotype 1.
So we're going to go down to management, go to treatment, and then we can choose genotype 1. And there's your list. There is now the pan-genotypic treatment as well, so it makes it really easy. You can just choose one for all of them. I encourage everyone who hasn't been involved in Hep C treatment, now the GPs can do it. They simply fill out a form, fax it through to your local hospital hepatology unit. We have those forms on our site. The forms are on the Western Sydney site as well. There's practice software templates. 90 to 95% success rate. So it's a really good initiative to start with patients.
And the final question, what cervical screening options and frequency should be offered to a, Ben, you wrote this, how do you say this?
A person that had a condition starting with D. Does anyone else like to help us out as a doctor? How would you pronounce that?
Okay.
Wait. Well done. I apologise for my So offer annual co-test and colposcopy examination. So again, you can see how quick and easy it is to find this information. You would have also seen that on the front page if you had a look. We had that news section, so where we talked about things such as, actually I'm going to go back to that site there. Go up to the top of cervical screening. This is one that we didn't talk about a second ago. It's called a clinical editor's note. A clinical editor's note you won't see it very often, but when they're there, it's because it's trying to tell you a very important piece of information. So this one was talking about the fact that there was some changes there. On the cervical screening, it talked about the changes that we can't do self-test or advocate self-test just yet. So those good to read. You see one on a pathway. And now to find a winner. I'll draw. Do you want to draw the Western Sydney? Can we trust him to draw one for Western Sydney? Yes? Okay. And the winner from Western Sydney of a $250 event cinema gift card, that's a lot of gold class movies. Dr. Fernando. Is there a Dr. Fernando here? Round of applause, please. And for Southwestern Sydney, it looks like we didn't care about them because we scrunched them up. It makes it easier for us to randomly rummage through a bag. We will be keeping all of these because you gave us your email addresses. And we will be letting you know about your pathways as they come up, so you'll be well informed, which is a good thing. And we have here Dr. Khalid. Thank you very much.
So before you finish, breaking news I hear is that there are some drug and alcohol health pathways that are either almost live or live.
So we were lucky enough to get our alcohol pathways and our drug and alcohol request pages up onto the southwestern Sydney site yesterday morning, which was very exciting. Thank you. Because there's a lot of hard work by a lot of people. So all of the information that was given to you today about DASAS and ADAS and the new advice service, you'll find all those contact details in there as well. We do also have in the alcohol, if you wish to use the audit, there's an online audit that you can use that will calculate it for you within the pathway.
And Western Sydney, unfortunately we couldn't get ours live today, but from next week we should have around 15 drug and alcohol pages live.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, guys. It's great to see those drug and alcohol health pathways up there. Great timing given that you guys have come along and done this training, and you can log on to Health Pathways and get some extra help there. Having been involved in the drug and alcohol health pathways for South East Sydney, it's a lot of work, but it's really, really great. And it's really a lot. The thought has been it's around how can we make this quick and easy for GPs, by GPs, for GPs. So we're at the end of the day, guys. We've just got a few more minutes. I'm going to let you go early. But I just wanted to just kind of check in, were there any burning questions, issues? There's a hand here.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask about the New South Wales health regulations, which haven't been mentioned.
That's a really good point, thank you. So you're particularly talking about prescribing of opioids and Schedule 8s and S4Ds. Okay, so one of the things that is something that you do need to know about, and it is not a defence to say that you didn't know, is about, in New South Wales, the regulations around prescribing opioids and the S8 benzodiazepines. This is different to an authority script through PBS. So if you have someone who you are going to give a script to for either the S8s, alprazolam, flunitrazepam, or the other S8s, and they are a drug-dependent person, you cannot do that without getting a New South Wales State Authority. And you can find that authority form up on the Pharmaceutical Services Unit website. So it's easily available. If they are drug dependent, you cannot give them that. The trickiness is working out if somebody is drug dependent. Once again, it's not okay to say that you didn't know. If there are good features that someone is drug dependent, you do need to get an authority. If the other one is that you do need an authority to prescribe some of the opioids, if you're going to prescribe them for longer than 2 months. So that includes the intranasal, injectable, hydromorphone, buprenorphine, methadone, if you're prescribing them for chronic pain. If you're prescribing them for opioid pharmacotherapy, the methadone and buprenorphine, you have to get an authority separately. So have a look on the Pharmaceutical Services website, go into the medical practitioner's site, because it's very clearly up there, and it is a little confusing because there's only certain ones that you need to do it for. And the other thing is you don't need to do it for Norspan, you don't need to do it for OxyContin if they're not drug dependent. But you will need to do a PBS authority for a continuing supply after a year. What I am seeing, and something that I think is really important for us to be aware, is that I do some work for the Coroner's Court, I do some work for the Medical Board, and I do some work for the Administrative Tribunal. So I'm involved in looking at the cases of doctors who haven't done this, and doctors are getting into trouble. And what the law clearly says is, it is not an excuse to be ignorant of the legislation around legal prescribing. So really worthwhile having a look. It's also another good way, if you're thinking, I'm not sure that this is safe in this person, to actually say, I actually can't. Legally, I can't. Yeah, because there is legislation around this. So thank you for that question. Does that adequately describe what you wanted to say?
The issue is deciding who's drug dependent, and that's a really tricky one. That might be where we call the information lines and have a chat.
Yeah, so the prescription shopping information service, once again, it's really good to be aware of that and call that up, but you do need to be aware of the limitations. So it's only on PBS scripts. If people are getting private scripts, you won't see it. The other thing is that it needs to be very high level. Yeah? So more than 25 scripts in a 3-month period for any medication, for the medications of interest, and more than 50 for others. So it does have limitations. So be aware of that. Ringing up Dr. Shoppers is a really good thing to do, but it may not trigger it for the patient that you're seeing. So thinking about what are those other things that make you concerned that this person may be drug dependent. And you can prescribe, you just need to get an authority.
So I have two proposals or things to say. First, we all have heard about the policy no jab, no pay. Which reflect the immunization, providing immunization for children. Automatically, Medicare identifies children that they haven't completed their scheduled immunization and notifies Centrelink. Then Centrelink will stop the pay for the parents. The second that the parents are in new surgery to get that fixed. Now we do get often notifications from Medicare about a person who has been using a lot of drugs or medication or obtaining prescription from multiple doctors. Why there is no such policy about Medicare notifying Centrelink and stopping their payment, which I believe are mostly on Centrelink benefits? One more thing? No. And the other thing is about prescribing opioids. I believe as a general practitioner we need a certain policy as well that we can't proceed certain dosage of prescribing to be limited in the maximum and the safe limit, like let's say 40 milligram of morphine equivalent on daily doses. Any dose higher than that, it should be prescribed by specialists like dexamphetamine or amphetamine done by a pediatrician or psychiatrist.
I'm going to come to your second part and then we'll go back to the other one, which is a little bit more contentious. But just thinking about that idea that do we want to have a situation where it limits, and we say as a GP, more than 50 milligrams oral morphine equivalents per day, no, I'm sorry, you can't prescribe as a GP. There is actually a TGA process going on at the moment where they're asking for submissions. So I encourage you to put in your submission around that. The trickiness that we have with that though is what if you can't access a specialist service? How does that work for doctors working in regional, rural, remote?
I believe like a dose of 20 milligram or 30 milligram of morphine equivalent, if that's not helping, 50 milligram, 60 milligram is not going to do any better.
I have to say, I think you're probably right there. What do other people think? Should we be actually limiting and putting some legislation in that limits us as GPs from prescribing more than perhaps 50 milligrams oral morphine equivalent, something like that? 40. Yeah? Any thoughts, anybody?
Depends what the request of the patient. If he is cancer patient, we can prescribe.
Absolutely. I believe you're talking about chronic non-malignant pain, not end-of-life care or acute pain. Okay, so I think that that's a really interesting idea. There's a whole philosophical kind of story around that. But I wanted to come to this idea of the no jab, no pay. Yeah, so what you're suggesting is someone that's using opioids, if they don't do as they're told, then they are also have their Centrelink benefits cut. People that are identified by Medicare? Yeah, okay.
But doesn't that go against the principle of compassion and kindness that we are trying out here? The Centrelink payment doesn't affect just the patient, it affects the whole family. Are you going to punish the whole family for what the patient is doing, assuming that he's doing it with full knowledge and full willingness?
Just wait. So we've got compassionate care here, we've got a nod here.
I think it's a punitive response, and I think what we're trying to do as health professionals is to work with someone compassionately, empathetically, and to access services to help them deal with a problem they have, not to label them and treat them in a punitive way.
Anybody else want to say anything about that? I guess for me, I'm going to have to put my 2 cents worth in here. Dependency is a medical condition. It's like asthma. It's like diabetes. It's not like the conscientious objector that just doesn't want, that wants homeopathic remedies for their child. To me, that's an entirely different thing. That's a kind of a social decision. Whereas this is actually a condition, this is a medical condition, this is a real condition that affects people. And I do worry that by kind of saying, oh, these people are drug seekers, these people are doctor shopping, it gets into that paradigm which is good, genuine patients and bad people. And what we know is that there are really good reasons why people end up in those situations. And what will happen if we exclude and stigmatise and discriminate in that way, we actually lead to more harm, not just to the individual, but to the family. And the other thing that we know is that we have really good treatments that can help people change and get better and have lives that work better. However, it's a chronic illness. And it's always been a weird thing to me that people talk about this treatment's not working because people relapse, they get off treatment and then they relapse. What happens when somebody stops their blood pressure tablet? Their blood pressure goes up, and we don't see that as a failed treatment. So I'm going to leave it at that. I think it's a great question, or a great idea. Thank you. Anything else from anybody else before we finish up? Ah, here we go. I went the wrong way.
Thank you. I just want to share my experience with the other colleagues. I think a lot of them already know about it or notice about it. Talking about the prescription shoppers, I noticed that through our surgery, there's some particular people who sort of look like they all speak the same second language. They started coming to our place and then asking for, the opiates and I think particularly fentanyl. And when I suspected, they actually challenged, why don't you check the prescription shop online? So they're pretty sure that they're just going under the radar. And I think there is systematically managed by there must be some central sort of system managing that who should go to where, when, and they have the list. I think that's quite organized. I think I suspected. Just want to warn. And sometimes also they said, I have no Medicare, I'm just overseas visitor or students or something. And then they said, I'm happy to pay for the consultation. Because on the other hand, that fentanyl they can sell it for maybe a few $100s. And so yeah, just to share. Thanks.
You're absolutely right. The thing that I would say about that is that once again, I would encourage you to not stigmatise and discriminate and say this is a bad person. But the story for you is, do I know this person? Is this safe? Is this good medical care? And work it from that point of view.
I just have one question about the patient with chronic back pain and seen by the ongoing care in the pain clinic. And the pain clinic actually because of the after assessment investigation, because of the disaster motor vehicle accident after that happened. So patient has to be on a Oxycontin and Endone. So we try to cut down, but he's working and also it's difficult to do because of the pain issue and those things. He's going to work, he's going to work, but he can't help without the working LPT without the medicine. So few times we try to cut down, but look like he's a drug dependent. Without the medicine, he can't work. See, in that case, we have to have we're giving authority skip, like monthly basis, but still we do need any authority to say apply for that.
I'm not sure that patient is drug dependent, so chronic pain is not really what we were looking at today. But what I would suggest is if you've got questions like that, have a chat to the Pharmaceutical Services Unit. They're very good. You can talk with them, or talk with your GP support people. So that's really, because it is a bit tricky. It's a tricky area, and I can't give you, or any of us can't give you a quick answer in a minute. But ask for help with that. Yep. So on that note, I'm going to finish up. I've had a fantastic day and I hope you all have too. Now I need to do a couple of things. I need to make sure that you guys, anybody who didn't sign in at the beginning, go see Ella up the back there and sign in, because otherwise you won't get your CPD points. Finally, you do need to do just an evaluation of today, and there will be some post-disposal. No, that's not. Reinforcing, that's the other thing. Reinforcing activity as well that you will need to do to get your points as well. So thank you so much for your attention today. It's been fantastic. I hope that you've learned some good stuff out of it. And all the best with everything, and talk to your drug and alcohol people, talk to those local services, get that support so that you can actually do this work and enjoy your work.